I am what you would call an urban explorer, and not just any kind of explorer at that. I'm specifically one who is not only adventurous, but also a little messed up in the head. Not because I risk my life, as well as my police record, to go and find as many places to go to, but I even go a step further by doing some ghost hunting as well, depending on the place that I go to, that is. Now, I know that messing with that kind of thing is really frickin' stupid, but honestly, I really couldn't care less. I love the feeling, for us, that it gives me. I guess you could say that I have a bit of an addiction to it, and you'd be right. I honestly don't really know how, or why for that matter, I got into exploring in the first place. All I know is that I started doing it when I was 10 years old, and since then, have been doing it ever since. I have to say that my favorite places to go to and explore are abandoned houses, asylums, churches, and the like. For me, it's like a big treasure chest. You never know what you're going to find in there unless you look. I have had quite some surprises pop up when I explored those places. For one, I once found a suitcase in an old, decrepit house that was filled with baseball cards of every kind, including some rare ones that would have made me one rich son of a gun if I had actually decided to take the case home with me. I never understood why I didn't take it home with me, but whatever. Despite all of the risk, dangers, and potential arrest, I really enjoy what I do. However, I do remember one instance that actually not only managed to scare the heck out of me, but even put me off exploring for the next 6 months. It was the August of 2012. I and a few friends, Daniel and Joss, were off going on some kind of vacation to celebrate our graduation from college. I can't really recall where we were on going to, but what I do remember is that it was located in Austin, Texas. However, it was about an 18-hour long drive from Minnesota to Austin, Texas. Now, the drive itself wasn't really that bad. If anything, it was one of the most memorable moments in my life. Me and two friends all laughing, telling jokes, and listening to all the Metallica we could stand before our ears started bleeding. I love Metallica myself, especially Enter Sandman, so this guy's got good taste. Now, despite the fact that we had a GPS, we wound up getting ourselves lost. I honestly don't know how we got lost, but if I had to make a guess, I think it was the crappy operating system programmed in that GPS we bought. Then again, it was about 25 bucks, so I guess you get what you pay for. With all the dreams of getting to that weird place we were planning on going to dashed, we all decided to just take a week off our vacation in the place that we had managed to land ourselves in. Odellville, Odellville, I think that's how you pronounce it, Kentucky, Connecticut. The town itself wasn't really as big as we expected it to be. It had some of the basics a grocery store, a pub, a few small hotels, some other shops, an apartment complex, and a large town hall. But that was about it. Despite the fact that there wasn't very much to the town, we decided to just stay at one of their hotels and just chill there for the week. Once we had gotten ourselves checked in, unpacked, and rested, my friends decided to send me out into the town to check and see if there was anything to do there. I was a bit reluctant, seeing how there really wasn't nothing special about the place, but I just sucked it up and went. On my drive down the main part of town, I accidentally made a left turn when I was supposed to turn right, and I found myself going down dirt roads filled with rows and rows of wheat and corn crops. Now, I would have turned around and went back to the hotel, but since it was a one way road, I couldn't actually turn around without crashing into something. This meant that I had to keep driving until I found a separate road or driveway that I could safely back out of. After about 20 minutes of driving in complete and utter darkness, I wound up up to a large red farmhouse in the distance. About 5 minutes later, I finally got myself to where the barn house was located. To my surprise, the farmyard surrounding the barn was a lot bigger than I had expected. However, it wasn't the size of the barnyard that was most intriguing. It was the oddness of the setting. The barn house itself looked very faded. The red and white paint that had once adored the wood was now chipped and worn. The grass surrounding the farmhouse was very long, about 4 or 5 inches high. The actual home, to what I assumed must have been a farmer's, looked like it hadn't been touched in months. I wondered, I wondered to myself, if this place was abandoned or if the owner was just lazy at doing his job. After turning my car around, I managed to get myself back to the small town. This time, instead of searching around for interesting places, I stopped at the local pub and decided to get some kind of answers about that barnyard place I had just been at. It wasn't easy getting anyone to actually talk to me, mostly because of the fact that most of the people there were either drunk or passed out on the floor, but I wound up managing to get someone to talk to. It was an old woman, about 5 feet in height. She had long orange hair, wore pink glasses with small chains around the ends, wore a very traditional looking blue and white dress with matching apron wrapping around her with a matching apron wrapped around her waist. She also had flower earrings and pink high heels. I remember walking up to her and asking some questions about the barnyard place that I had been at. She gave me a worried look and then proceeded to explain that she hadn't really seen anyone come out of that farm for quite some time, which she said, at least, was very odd, seeing as how the farmer buyer, usually made many trips to the town's farmer mar- farmer's market to sell his produce. I asked her if the farm was abandoned, and she responded that, with the lack of activity coming from that place, she wouldn't have been surprised if it was. I thanked her and made my way back to the hotel. I was honestly beaming with excitement at the idea of actually exploring an abandoned barnyard. When I got back, I found both of my friends had fallen asleep while I was away. I honestly didn't care that they were asleep. It just gave me more time to go exploring. I made sure to grab all my usual gear: pocket knife, flashlight, water bottle, and combat boots before I got back into the car and drove off. It didn't take long for me to get myself back to the barnyard. When I got there, I made sure to get all of my gear together and then I got out of my car and locked it. I remember the weird feeling I got when I got out of my car. It felt like I wasn't supposed to be there. Seeing how it might have been my nerves, which usually it always is when I go to a new place, I sucked it up and made my way into the main area of the farm. Once I arrived, I took a long look around. There really wasn't much for me to actually explore, just the main farmhouse and barn. It wasn't what I was used to when exploring, but it was enough. The first place I decided to go and check out was the farmer's home. I made my way over towards a small two-story building and walked over towards the front door. For the heck of it, I knocked on the door. I knew for a fact that nobody was home. I mean, it was abandoned, after all. But I thought that would be something to joke about with my friends at the next road trip. The weirdest thing happened, though, when I went to knock on the door. I found it to be already opened. Seeing as I didn't need to smash a window in order to let myself in, I shrugged and walked in. As I made my way in, I noticed something that made me stop dead in my tracks. All of the furniture, TV, couch, tables, chairs, etc., were all still there. This was definitely confusing, as I expected the house to be more or less a pigsty of broken glass, messed up furniture, and signs of attempted looting. However, there was nothing. It was as if everything was a part of a museum. It took some time to look at some of the pictures that were scattered on the wall. It was just pictures of a farmer, at least what I thought was the farmer, and some other pictures of some of his family. I decided to look around a little bit more, but I found nothing. Well, of interest, that is. I finally had gotten bored of the first floor and made my way towards the second floor of the house. There were about four doors upstairs, but that was about it. I managed to open up three of the doors around me, but the fourth one was locked from the inside for some odd reason. I tried breaking down the door, but instead I wound up bruising my shoulder. I finally decided to just get out of the house and see what else I could find. After leaving the house, I made my way towards the barn itself. Despite the fact that the barn needed a fresh coat of paint, it didn't look all that bad. As I inched closer towards the front door, I had a strange feeling that something wasn't right. Well, I mean, there obviously wasn't anything right about this situation, but this feeling was different. It felt like something was tugging in the inside of me, begging not to be brought to not be brought into whatever was in that barn. However, me being the idiot that I wasn't going to let a bad feeling get in the way of my fun. I immediately opened one of the doors. It was rather heavy, to say the least. After walking into the barn, I put out my flashlight and turned it on. What I wound up seeing was a big stack of nothing. Seriously, there was nothing at all. No animals, no tools, no hay bales, nothing. At this point, I was on the verge of just giving up and leaving. when I saw something that made me stop dead in my tracks. At first, it didn't seem like much, but after shining the flashlight on the ground, I saw blood. Not much, just a few drops, but still. My disappointment had now turned into curiosity. As I stepped closer to examine the bloodstains, I saw that they weren't dry, but fresh. This was certainly weird. I mean, where did they come from? As far as I knew, I hadn't cut myself, so there was no reason why that blood was there. When I had gotten up from my spot that I had been in to examine the blood, I wound up tripping on something. A piece of wood I later found, and my flashlight illuminated a farther part of the floor. What I saw made my heart sink. The small drops that I had found on the floor increased more and more until there were nothing more but a trail of fluorescent blood that led to one of the stalls. I hesitantly, that is, made my way towards the stall that the blood trail led to. That's when I heard it, the sound of chewing. Why hadn't I noticed it beforehand, I will never know. As I walked closer and closer to the stall door, I heard the sound of munching getting louder and louder with each step. I then reached for the stall door and slowly opened it. My nerves were shaking with every passing moment. Opening the door, I shined a light at who or what was making the munching sound. What I saw was baffling. I saw a small orange ferret sitting in the middle of the stall. I sighed with relief and then cursed myself at being so paranoid. I made a few clicking sounds to try and get the ferret's attention, but nothing worked. I just sat there eating whatever it had in its paws. I then sat at it, and that's when I got a reaction. Oh my gosh, do I now regret that with all my heart? The ferret's head sawed up, as if alarmed, and then stood up on its hind legs, which I found odd. After it did that, it dropped what it was eating. I didn't get a good look at it at first, but when I shined the flashlight on it, my blood turned to ice. What that bird was eating was the severed head of a farmer, or at least what was left of it. The head itself lacked any visible skin. Instead, it just revealed muscle tissue, the eyes, and the tongue had been ripped out by something, and the skull was cracked in some parts, revealing the brain inside. I had to choke back vomit at what I had seen. I then shakenly pointed my light towards the ferret. It had since turned itself around when I had examined the head, and when I saw what I saw still haunts me to this day. The front side of the ferret was doused in blood, so much in fact that, if I hadn't seen its backside, I would have mistaken the red blood for its actual fur color. The eyes, oh my gosh, the eyes were pitch black, with the exception of a thin layer of white that had been covered. However, the whites weren't white at all, but bloodshot. It looked at me and then gave a toothy grin. Its teeth were covered in a heavy amount of blood, bits of flesh and gore stuck in between its teeth. It continued to smile at me, and then it spoke. It frickin' spoke to me. Are you as hungry as I am? I remember it saying in a deep, demonic voice. The thing then let out a blood curdling scream. I honestly booked it at that point. There was no way in heck I was going to stay in that barn with that thing. I ran as fast as I could, but the thing chased after me with a speed that made Roadrun look like a turtle. I barely managed to get away from that thing by hiding myself in a random room that I had found. I knew for a fact that if I had tried to get to the front door, the thing would have gotten me. I remember, as I locked the door I was in, I smelled a rather vile odor. I turned around and saw a sight that still to this day makes me retch. The entire room was packed with slaughtered animals, some rotting, some freshly killed. Most, if not all, of the animals were either dismembered or skinned in a most gruesome fashion. I would have puked right then and there if it wasn't for the fact that the thing was ramming itself, rather hard on my hand, into the door. To make matters worse, I kept on hearing that thing keep saying over and over again, "Are you as hungry as I am?" I knew that I didn't have much time to react. I quickly looked around and found a small window that led to the outside of the barn. I immediately ran for the window, slipping and getting covered in a copious amount of blood as I did. I managed to slip myself out of the window just in time before the door gave way. I had hit the ground hard, but I was determined to get the heck out of there ASAP. I ran as fast as I could to my car and got in. I then started my car and began driving away from the barn. However, once I finally pulled onto the dirt road, I saw something that turned my blood into ice. Less than 5 feet away from my car was that thing, that ferret. It gave me that disgusting grin once more, and then it lifted up one of its paws to reveal a sharp and bloody knife. I knew for a fact that I wasn't planning on taking any chances with this thing, so I revved up my car and drove as fast as I could where the ferret was standing. I then heard a few thumps, some snaps, and finally a disgusting popping sound and drove off. I made sure to take one final look out of my rear view mirror just to make sure that thing was dead, and to my relief, it was. Once I had gotten back in town, I drove straight to the hotel, opened the door, and locked it behind me. My friends had apparently woken up not too long back, and then he noticed that I was covered in blood. Dude, what the heck happened to you? One of them asked. I didn't even bother responding to his question. The only things that I did do were get into the shower to clean myself off and sit back on the bed. My friends kept on asking me what had happened to me, and I just said nothing. I mean, what the heck was there to say? A ferret tried to kill me? What kind of a response was that? After a lot of pressing, I finally told them what had happened to me. I told them about the old barnyard that I had found while trying to look for some cool places to hang out. The bar with the old woman, the blood and gore that I saw. I told them everything, with the exception of a ferret attacking me. Instead, told them that some psycho had tried to kill me while I was there. The two of them looked really shocked after what I had told them. And they said that they were going to call the cops first thing tomorrow morning. The next morning, after eating some breakfast, my friend David called the police. The officer had asked David to hand the phone to me so that I could give them some of the details of what I had went through and where the place was. As you would have imagined, I was rather reluctant to give them any info at all. However, I later caved in and told them everything. They told me to meet them at the barnyard in a couple of hours to further describe my story. I did as I was told and made my way there. I was met with many cops, and had since covered the place in police tape, who took me to the captain of our squad. I was then taken to a police station for questioning. After some interrogation, they let me go. After that, me and my buddies packed up all of our stuff and left town immediately. Once we had gotten home, I dropped my friends off at their respective houses and then made my way back to my home. It took me months to get over what had happened to me. I still haven't said anything about the matter, well, at least up until now, that is. I went to therapy for a few months to try and rid myself of a nightmare that had happened to me, and thankfully it worked. As of now, I'm currently back to my old self again. I still have nightmares every so often about what had happened, but it doesn't affect me too badly. All I can say, however, is that I am never frickin' going back to Old Ellisville, Connecticut ever again. With that being said, I do feel that there is something that I should mention to all of you. When I was getting myself to the barnyard where the police were stationed, I saw that the place that I had ran over the ferret was empty. There was nothing there. No blood, no gore, nothing. Just an empty space. I know that that thing is still out there, and the only thing that I can say is that wherever that thing is, I'll be ready for it.